Once Jeff Bliss became a big news icon and was getting a lot of positive press, people probably began feeling obligated to root for him. I'm not really sure that that's the correct spelling of root for that particular case. This could be from a smartphone, or simply you may not know the difference between R-O-O-T and R-O-U-T-E. I'm just not really sure at this point. Probably be more like the smartphone. Okay? You just have to recognize that it didn't start out that way. There are plenty of people who ran on YouTube and get a lot of hate for it because they sound like idiots. They don't just sound like idiots, they prove themselves to be idiots. The video itself was not what convinced these people on account of being a video. Jeff Bliss had to do that for himself. I'll go with that. Alright, so there's some points of agreement here. I have not been making these arguments to support the way Jeff Bliss handled the situation. Good, because I don't agree with the way he handled the situation. So, again, we're in agreement on that part. I'm not even saying he's right. He probably is, but there's a lot about what happened there that I do not know. I do not claim to be an expert on this case. I am not. Okay, well, I happen to have a little more data than you do. I actually researched the high school packets. I read some of the articles on this stuff. I have read about teaching methods all across the country. People send this information to me all the time. Plus, you have to consider, I've been to a rural school and had their education. I've been to a city technical institute and had their education. Plus, I've been to a college and been in a completely different environment there too. 3 different sets of education. And all this other information on top of it. So I have a little bit more expertise on this stuff than you do, apparently. Alright. And this is important to know as we continue this. All I am saying is that his argument should not be completely ignored simply because he does not meet your standards or credentials. It's not that he doesn't meet my standards or credentials. He didn't bring any others in either. That's the difference. Okay? When I said this sounds like something Jeff Bliss could say, okay, this is the part where she was saying, well, he would have a pretty good idea what was going on in the classroom because he's actually been in the classroom and you haven't. The thing is that I could get just about as much of an assessment of what's going on in that classroom as he did because I've had 3 different teaching environments, plus I've done research on various teaching methods from all over the world. So I can pretty much draw an accurate assessment of what was going on in that classroom without actually having to be in there. And then watching the video gave me all the other information I needed. Okay? Of course, I could have polled the students too, and if any of those students, any of his peers, wants to write to me, fine, go right ahead. Alright? I did not mean that he would phrase his argument thus, but rather he could make all the same claims you did in that quote and still be correct. He can't make those kind of claims because he's never been in 3 different teaching environments, and he's never done research, formal research, on this kind of a topic. That's the difference. Okay? I trust personal experience as the highest standard of credentials. Well, that could be a fatal error. It really can. It's just like when I went after Beauty Crush and the social anxiety disorder. The fact of the matter is, because you can't distinguish between regular shyness and social anxiety disorder because you've never done research on social anxiety disorder, you may not accurately be able to assess for yourself whether you have simple shyness or social anxiety disorder. That's the difference. So, personal experience, yeah, I disagree. If I wanted to know the weight of a gladius, now here's the thing. Like, all of us know what a gladius is. I've never done personal research on a gladius, but if you don't make a presentation about this in a future video or send me a response, well then I'm going to do a research project on this and I'll tell everybody what a gladius is. Because there's a lot of people that should know. I don't withhold information from people unlike some of my teachers. Okay, now, granted, a lot of my teachers did a very good job, but some of them like to withhold information, and I have proven my point. I don't like teachers that withhold information. And when I find a teacher that withholds information, I go out there and I tell people what's out there anyway. I say, you know, screw it. You're not going to tell them? I will. You don't like it, that's tough. Okay? Now then, if I wanted to know the weight of a gladius, I would much more quickly trust someone who owns and regularly practices with his own gladius over a medieval historian who has done a lot of research. It depends on what kind of research he's done, what kind of academic credentials he has, so on and so forth. Just because you regularly work with a gladius doesn't mean you know everything about it. You work with dinosaur bones and not know everything about them. Trust me on this. So, it just depends on what kind of research this other guy has done and how much information he has. He may have 10 times the information as the one working with it. Shoot, I work in a photo lab all the time. But am I an expert on photography? Absolutely not. Even with all my experience, I'm not an expert in photography. I have a coworker that's an extreme expert on photography. I'm not even sure why this coworker works in my lab. He should be out there taking professional wedding pictures, so on and so forth. He'd probably make a killing at it. Oh well. I've seen supposed experts on the History Channel sprout some embarrassing false information. Now here's the problem. These false experts are relying on credentials that are bad. Okay? They're saying they were trained at so-and-so facility by so-and-so teachers. Well, later on you find out that those so-and-so facilities and those so-and-so teachers were bankrupt. So he was receiving a lot of bad teaching, or very little teaching at best. So see what I mean? The fault really isn't with the person sprouting all this information, it's the people's credentials he's relying on. There you go. Alright. If I wanted to report on what it's like to experience starvation, drugs, rape, childbirth, or any number of other things, I would trust the opinion of those who have actually gone through such an experience over those who have researched it. I wouldn't. Because there are a lot of details about things like, well, let's go with drug use. Listen, a drug user could tell you the effects of the drug, but he couldn't tell you what was really happening to his brain. On the other hand, somebody who has a medical doctor's license can tell you, hey, these are the things that are happening to this guy's brain because he's using the drugs. So an MD would have a lot more information about drug use than the druggee. Okay? You get a broader range of experience from an MD than you would from a druggee. He may be able to tell you his day-to-day experiences, but to know the real extent of the damage he's doing to his brain, you have to have an MD to do that. And a good MD. Big difference. Alright. Similarly, I would trust any of the students in that class over your opinion on what goes on in that class. That could be a big mistake. Because I'm relying on the combined information of students across the country and teachers across the country, research on packets, 3 different teaching environments that I've been in myself, so on and so forth. So I can draw a pretty good picture of what's going on in that classroom that actually happen to be in there. Sure, it would be nice to hear the experiences of those peers, but they may not know what that teacher's thinking or how that teacher's trying to teach. Like I said, I've had the experience of many different teaching environments. She may alternate between one teaching environment to the next. I don't know. They don't know what she's thinking. They only know what they're seeing. And that could be very warped, to say the least. All right. Because they spend every day there, they know the situation much better than you. Not necessarily. You can stand there and watch construction workers all day. Even construction workers may not know everything that's going on. Their bosses might, but they probably don't. They only know what they see. The bosses would know what the real configuration was. There may be details that have not been given to the workers that had it been given to the workers, they would have a different perspective of what was going on. So that's wrong. Okay. You stated that you don't agree with the teacher. How do you come to that conclusion? All right. First, I've read the news reports of the teacher. I've watched Jeff Bliss's responses. I've read about school training all across the world. I get YouTube responses on a regular basis on this. And I have done research on high school packets from qualified teachers. So it's a conglomeration of the evidence that tells me what's going on in that classroom. And it gives me a much bigger picture of what's going on than what those students have. That's the difference. Okay? How do you come to that conclusion? From news reports? Not all of it. Where do these news reports get their information from? The colleagues and students of the teacher, of course. Not all of it. They get a conglomeration of information, just like I showed you. Okay? So your credentials of this situation are essentially coming from the many people like Jeff Bliss. No. They're coming from a conglomeration of information that I'm getting from multiple sources. Incorrect. As I said before, people are flawed and nobody should ever base their opinion off of a single person. I agree with that. This includes Jeff Bliss. Many people have based their opinion solely on Jeff Bliss, which is a mistake. But what can you do? You can get on YouTube and tell them that's a mistake. That's what you could do. I have a feeling if you did the amount of research you hinted at, you would have gotten a lot of your information from her colleagues. No, I would have consulted other teachers. I would have read news articles from all over the world. No. I wouldn't have gotten all my information just from her colleagues. Wrong again. How much did you take the students' opinions into account? Not very much, because I'm getting a conglomeration of information from all over the world. And it's painting a very nice picture. Because assuming that the teachers would know more on account of being teachers, well, they would, and therefore having more credentials is silly. No, it's not silly, it's just academically correct, but I didn't rely just on those teachers. I relied on multiple credentials from multiple teachers all over the world. Plus, I relied on news reports and everything else. I got a far bigger picture than what those students have. So, like I said, I didn't regard the students too much. They can just tell you the day-to-day experiences. They can't tell you the real environment that's going on. That's incorrect. Or more likely, you would have gotten that information from others who have already interpreted the opinions of her colleagues. Not all of it. How much did you can see? Because assuming that teachers would know... Okay, I got it. The other teachers are busy in other classrooms. Yes, but they do talk in the faculty lounge. And like I said, I wasn't relying just on the teachers of that school, but I was relying on the teachers of all over the world. Big difference. And it wasn't just teachers, it was students, it was books that have been written on this stuff, whole 9 yards. They would rarely see what's going on in the classroom. They get most of their information from other teachers. Well, they probably hear the students too, and they would judge based on what the students were saying and the teachers were saying and all this other information and make a comprehensive evaluation. Okay. If the teacher did wrong in some way, she would speak of the day in such a way as to put her in the best possible light, or she wouldn't speak of it at all. Here's the thing. If you're a teacher, you're smart enough to be able to discern whether somebody is playing horseplay with you or is telling you the truth. That comes from years of experience and research and whole 9 yards, and I'd love to go into that with you. I might do that in a later video. But are you getting the picture here? Okay. If you ignore the students based on them not having the education to form a proper opinion, You are taking an almost entirely biased opinion. No, that's because I'm not relying on those teachers either. I'm relying on teachers all over the world. I'm listening to students all over the world, so on and so forth. And some of these students have gotten out of high school, so they have some credentials of their own. So like I said, I'm relying on a conglomeration of information. That's the difference. I once witnessed a teacher verbally harassing a student for asking if anyone had seen so-and-so. That name wouldn't mean anything to you anyway. I know that. I kid you not, that is literally all the student did. Might have been the manner in which he did it that could cause the problem. The teacher then followed him down the hall, shouting at him about, "Oh, you need me to baby you, is that it? Can't find these people that on your own, huh? Hey, I'm talking to you. Yeah, you're just going to run away like a baby, is that it?" Almost word for word. I later heard him talking to a couple of other teachers about how idiotic the student was, not mentioning his own behavior, and it just disgusted me. Well, the thing is, even with those teachers teaching in their own classrooms, they probably would have heard that commotion. And based on the commotion, combined with what the student was saying and the teacher was saying, they could actually make a comprehensive evaluation. I didn't do some kind of poll to see how many other students hated that teacher. I didn't have to. Yeah, but it would have been more convincing if you had. I was hearing it everywhere I walked. Well, of course you were. I'm sure teachers were saying the same thing. I'm sure students were saying the same thing. Just depends on what you listen to. Yes, if Jeff Bliss wanted to make an impact, he should have gathered more evidence, as should anyone. But this display didn't seem planned. But he should have planned it. He was that angry about it, he should have gone home that very day, done a ton of research, gotten the statistical data, and just slammed that teacher with all kinds of facts, figures, and credentials. And he could have won. He wasn't relying on his own credentials, he was relying on all this other evidence too. That makes a far better case. Okay? There is a difference between evidence and credentials, at least the way I see it. Credentials is a matter of status and past experience. It is. It is a matter of, I don't need evidence, you should believe me simply based on my credentials. Depends on how good those credentials are. If you have a good reputation, you should believe this person. Okay? Which is mostly the argument you have been making. My argument was good credentials, not just any credentials, but good ones. Ones that are well backed up. Just like in the case of Galileo. Galileo had just as good as credentials as the ones he was going after, the aristocrats. And it became quite a heated debate. Otherwise, he'd have been shamed and he would have not had a good case. Eventually, they did believe Galileo. That's the horrible thing. They actually did believe him. So, evidence is information you gather to support your theory because you don't have enough credentials for people to simply believe you immediately. But you can gather other people's credentials. There you go. If a man without credentials told me there was a fire and I smelled smoke and heard a commotion nearby, that would be evidence supporting his cause. Yes, but then you could check out and he could say, well, he's got a smoke machine and the commotion is because somebody's having a birthday party. Or better yet, the smoke you're smelling is from a birthday cake that they've dumbly brought into the room, and the commotion is a birthday party. See? He may not have any credential, but he still has evidence. There is a difference. Yes, but it's flawed evidence. That's the problem. See what I mean? Okay, now I'm going to stop the video right there and I will finish this up in my next presentation. And hopefully you guys have learned a lot of stuff. I know I've been talking a lot here, starting to lose my voice on this one, but I think you guys are getting the idea. Let's go to the conclusion at this point. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of this to you, but let's go to the conclusion here. You can either present your own credentials in an argument, or you can draw from other people's credentials. Just make sure they're good ones, and still win the argument. You could also present irrefutable evidence. Statistical data rarely lies. People will manipulate it, but as long as it's not manipulated data, it doesn't lie. See the difference? Okay. I know, this is a lot of information. And I sound a little crazy at times because of this. But, like I said, Jeff Bliss could have either relied on his own credentials or the credentials of somebody else to win the argument. Either way, he still could have won. I will tell you more in my next video. Stay tuned.